Hello friends, in this video we're going to look inside this Sharp 50-inch LED TV. This one is only about 5 or 6 years old. It kind of died completely a while back, and it doesn't do anything at all right now except it makes an odd squealing noise. Here's the model tag for reference on the back. This has features like you'd expect: multiple HDMI ports, antenna, component video, that kind of thing. Pretty much what every modern TV has. We can see a couple of speaker ports here. The squeal this thing makes is in a specific area. I kind of think it's something's gone wrong with the power supply, which would explain why nothing else works in this. And I think most likely it's going to end up as a parts piece. Normally TVs like this aren't designed to be repaired, and I'm not in that much of a mood to try to fix this one, even though it seems like kind of a waste. The honest truth is they're kind of disposable items nowadays. We've got an e-scrap event at my employer later today, so I'm going to do a quick job and get some of the parts out of it if I can't be fixed immediately. So next we'll look at the squealing sound. Squeal is maybe too strong a term for this. I don't know if you want to call it buzz or what, but it doesn't seem like a noise that this type of TV would normally make. I'm going to let you listen to that for a moment and boost the sound level in case it doesn't come through very well. One of the features of this sound is it isn't real consistent, so that also tells me that it's probably not a normal sound. I don't think TVs like this make any sound at all except for the TV audio itself. We've got a bunch of screws here. We're going to take all those out and kind of lift off the back panel. Now I'm in the typical situation you find here. Taking every screw out I can think of. The lid may or may not come off. Sometimes they have plastic clips that hold them on. Sometimes you missed a screw. You know, there's different possibilities, but I'm going to try to just lift this off and see how it goes. Having some success, but I may need to do more, so we'll get back to you on that. Turns out I missed a screw here, so I pulled that out. A lot of times the way to do this is to start at one end that moves and kind of peel your way around. Voila! Turns out it snapped right off after I got everything else done. So as a parts piece, there's some obvious things here. This is a speaker enclosure that has at least 2 elements that I can see. Typically the speakers in these are actually pretty good for the size that they have to work with. So that's, you know, could become bookshelf speakers or something like that. This is obviously a power supply board with transformers, heat sinks, isolator transformers or chokes, capacitors. We've got obviously a switching power supply going on here. That's definitely worth saving. I don't really have time to fix this in light of the e-scrap event later today. I want to kind of be rid of most of it. So here you can see this is the main video board. There's obviously some sort of processor under this heat sink. Got a lot of our inputs. We've got probably a digital interface to some sort of driver board, cables that go to the LCD panel. This little wire here probably goes to the LED display unit, I'm not sure. We've got a little interface board here of some kind. This is probably for the button controls. I forget Oh, here's the buttons on this side. So a little cable to run the buttons. You can see this is going to be pretty easy to just pull out each module. I can keep those and scrap them separately, and pull parts off. I might be able to fix the power supply if I want to, but I'm kind of thinking that it's not worth it. This type of TV you can buy used for under $100 at a thrift store. This is not a 4K TV. 50 is not a really big size in today's market. Probably buy a new one for maybe about $300. We probably paid about $500 for this, but that's been a few years ago and the prices keep coming down. So I think I'm going to look at it as a parts piece and take the main panel out as e-waste, given my time constraint that I've got to get to the e-waste event later this afternoon. Should have planned ahead better on that, but here we are. You can see here's the vent holes for the speaker. They've got one here, which kind of goes with this, and one here, which is probably the tweeter, goes here. So this is in effect a woofer, even though it's very small. With speakers, the physical dimensions are pretty important. You really can't do too much with a small size speaker, but these plastic enclosures probably have some sort of acoustic purpose as far as kind of giving this speaker more to drive against and helping its bass response. It looks like this is modular in the sense that you can unplug things very easily. And in principle, this could be repaired by replacing a module, but the module is, again, would probably cost more than a new TV. There aren't many TV repairmen left, but it used to be the modules for TV repairmen were vacuum tubes, and those were easy to replace, and they carried them around, and they had standard types. But this is a little different. So you can see where the speaker is distributed off of here. That kind of suggests that maybe the audio amplifier is in this section, although this looks more like a power supply for a local power supply for the processor here. One thing to bear in mind when working with a switching power supply like this is that it may hold high voltages even after turned off and unplugged. I see these capacitors are rated at 250 volts, so they may have that much voltage on them right now. So I'm going to kind of handle this with care and make sure I stay away from the capacitors. It's kind of a mechanical design detail. You can see that the heaviest part of the mechanics here is this cast aluminum or iron. Let's just find out. Here's a magnet. Okay, so that's aluminum. Magnet doesn't stick, but it attaches to these feet that support the weight. And everything here is pretty lightweight except the panel itself. So this one and its twin on the other side are anchored directly to this panel chassis. And they're strategically oriented for balance, where these feet, when they're angled, provide the right balance to put the center of gravity, right in the middle here. Here's a nice little design detail. This whole LCD TV hinges on the fact of this little piece of tape holding the cable down. This unit has 3 of these little plastic clips, which are, okay, I guess they do come apart. I thought that was a push-in only thing, kind of like tie wraps, but it turns out they can be pulled apart with a reasonable amount of effort. Usually things like this place an emphasis on manufacture as opposed to disassembly, which makes sense in terms of the economics of these things, and that's why they go for so cheap. But Sometimes that works against my interest at this channel. Here's these clips after I pulled them apart. Here's a little module that's not sure what that is, some sort of driver module for the panel or RF module. Okay, I think I figured it out. Seems obvious after you know the answer. This is the Wi-Fi module. This is a sort of all-in-one Wi-Fi system with a little bit of passive components probably on the other side, and then a data cable that goes up here to the processor. And that's why this doesn't connect to anything apparently except the processor itself. This is a little bit of an odd thing. That may be partly power distribution for the LCD panel module. Tried to pull these off to look at the processor, but that isn't clear how those come off yet. We'll figure that out later. Okay, I figured out what this is and why it's there. This is the infrared sensor. So there's a little clear panel on front of this plastic piece. And if you look closely, you can see two little dots there that are the infrared sensors. So we got our speakers and all our major modules out. So we'll take those to the workbench next and see what else we can find. Here's a module I've been neglecting, but I can see is probably important. This is probably the LCD driver module. I assume that one cable goes for rows and the other goes for columns, and this converts a video signal in digital form into driver signals for the LCD. You can see it has this kind of lightweight heat sink on it, and that may even provide a little RF interference protection. So that kind of makes sense. This probably consumes a non-trivial amount of power, but it's not a huge amount, so a lightweight heat sink like that would probably make sense. So for my purposes, we can just go ahead and yank out these cables, and we can also look at this driver board later. You can see here's the serial digital video input, and then these two probably outputs. You see those go directly to the panel. There's a little more driver circuitry here of some kind on these long PC boards. I just noticed that. Maybe this isn't a row and column format at this point, but it's more of a left and right format, who knows. But you can see this is a flexible PC board, but it's got 1, 2, 3 cables on each end. So maybe this is some sort of multiplexer. You've got a lot of individual row and column lines that have to be driven on the LCD itself. It's basically a large array of thin film transistors that drive individual LCD pixels, as well as there's a built-in backlight, which I'm pretty sure goes in through this cable. We got some more mechanical features there that are of any great interest. So we'll probably pull all of these out just for the heck of it. I don't know if there's anything real exciting to see there. One design detail, we've got these kind of large grounding braids that go to this chassis. Looks like if I were to take this further apart, which I won't do, there might be something that hooks into these hooks here. Maybe there's some sort of subdriver board in this area that kind of drives the planar transistors itself. These boards appear to be essentially part of the LCD panel itself. The reason I say that is this can't be disconnected, at these ribbon cable points. These can be disconnected or connected here at this apparent driver board category. So this is sort of where our level of modular design stops. I went ahead and pulled these little braid things off. They're actually just glued on with some sort of probably conductive glue as a kind of an alternative to soldering. Pulled these cables off the driver board. Those probably aren't of any real reuse value. They're kind of too specialized. But we'll take them down to look at anyway in the workshop. So now I've got the part essentially that I want to throw away as e-scrap, which is the entire LCD panel itself and just a little bit of associated circuitry. This back panel is pure plastic. That's of no use, but since it's plastic and metal, it can just be conventional trash if I want to, or I might make it easy on myself by screwing it back on a little bit and pretending it's e-waste. Nah, I guess I'll just use it as real trash. So next we'll flip our panel over and kind of look at it in isolation. So there isn't too much to see here that we haven't seen in other forms. The back panel with these feet attachment, which is really what carries the weight of the thing through the bottom feet to whatever you set it on top of. The front of this looks essentially the same as without anything taken off except for the plastic bezel. You can see the logo here, Sharp. By the way, Sharp, I'm a little disappointed that this thing broke after 5 or 6 years, but you know, better luck next time. Now that it's all apart, I put the pieces on my workbench so we can look at those. We've got the power supply board. This is the processor board with all the inputs. We've got analog, video, HDMI, more HDMI, USB, RF. This I haven't looked at underneath yet, but we can assume that's some sort of major video processor. This is the infrared sensor that's tied together on this single cable with the basic control buttons. And we've got these two cute little speakers. I've got them shown opposite so you can kind of see both sides at once. We've got the tweeter here, the woofer here, the woofer here on this side, and tweeter again. Some cables. This is just a miscellaneous cable that came from somewhere. Here's the Wi-Fi module. So if you look at these as a whole from kind of a reuse standpoint, you know, the cables we can throw in the junk box. This little switch panel, I can see that going with a Arduino project or something in the future. The video board is so specialized that it's probably going to end up as e-waste. There aren't really any usable components here that could be used on another project in isolation. You know, there's surface mount components specialized, and you know, we can't reuse the whole board. This is a Wi-Fi module, probably not of any use from a reuse standpoint. Connecting something to Wi-Fi is a pretty complicated software job, so that's probably going to turn into e-waste. Power supply board I plan to go into detail on another video. This is a switching power supply. I've done another video on a PC ATX power supply, so I recommend you look at that. But there's something to talk about here in another video. In particular, notice how flat this is. That's a major design consideration for this type of unit. Aside from being, you know, inexpensive in production quantity, it needs to be flat as well. And with these speakers, the speakers are definitely keepers for another hobby project. I have an idea and a video in mind for those, so also look for that. And as always, you can really help me out by liking and subscribing and ringing the notification bell. So please do that if you get the urge. That ends our video. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.